In the farthest reaches of the galaxy, there were many powerful alien species, each with advanced technology and abilities that far surpassed the human race. To them, humans were fragile, weak, and insignificant. They could survive in harsh environments, endure great physical pain, and accomplish things that others couldn't even imagine. But they never had the strength that the aliens believed was required to truly make a difference in the universe. Jake Carter had always known this. He had been a pilot for the United Earth Fleet for years, yet, despite his expertise, he'd often been dismissed by his alien counterparts. They looked at him as nothing more than a human, a weak, fragile creature who didn't stand a chance in the unforgiving galaxy. But Jake didn't mind. He knew his worth, even if no one else did. One day, Jake received an urgent message from the fleet's command center. An alien research vessel, the Ithrian, had gone off course while exploring an unknown planet. The planet was surrounded by fiery storms, and the Ithrian had been caught in the heart of the chaos. Their systems were failing, and the crew was trapped with no way of escaping the planet's deadly atmosphere. The message was clear: we need help. The Ithrian is doomed unless someone gets through the firestorm to save us. Jake didn't hesitate for a second. He knew the planet's environment was extreme, and he also knew that no one else could get through it. The aliens, with their advanced tech, couldn't survive the scorching heat and violent winds. They would be reduced to ash before they even got close. But Jake wasn't like them. He was human, and humans had a way of surviving against all odds. He suited up in the emergency flight gear and boarded his personal ship, the Phoenix. The Phoenix was a sturdy vessel, built for tough situations, but it was small and far less advanced than most alien ships. Still, it was fast, maneuverable, and most importantly, Jake knew it like the back of his hand. He had flown through storms, navigated through asteroid fields, and survived near-death situations. He wasn't afraid of the firestorm. The flight was nerve-wracking. As he approached the planet, Jake's ship started to shake violently. The heat from the fiery storms around the planet was intense, and the sensors on his ship warned him that the temperature was reaching deadly levels. Sweat dripped down Jake's face, but his hands remained steady on the controls. He had done this before. The firestorm would not stop him. Jake pushed the Phoenix forward, ignoring the warnings and the burning sensation that filled the cockpit. Every part of his ship was screaming in protest, but he didn't back down. He pushed harder. He had a mission, and he wasn't going to fail. Hours passed as Jake flew deeper into the storm. The flames outside were a blur of orange and red, twisting and crackling with raw power. His ship had to dodge huge fireballs and chunks of molten rock, but Jake expertly navigated through it all. It wasn't easy, and at times it seemed impossible, but Jake kept his focus. He had made it this far. There was no turning back now. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jake saw the Ithrian in the distance. It was struggling to stay in orbit, its hull badly damaged, and the ship's exterior was covered in scorch marks. The alien crew was trapped inside, struggling to repair systems and keep the ship from falling apart. But Jake knew there wasn't much time left. If he didn't act quickly, the ship would be lost. With expert precision, Jake brought the Phoenix alongside the Ithrian. The heat from the planet below was unbearable, but Jake didn't hesitate. He lowered the Phoenix's docking bay, and with great skill, he connected it to the Ithrian's main airlock. The ship's hull groaned under the pressure, but it held. Jake quickly boarded the Ithrian and began helping the alien crew. "Jake, you made it," said Captain Exaler, an alien commander who had always looked down on humans. His voice was filled with disbelief. You actually made it through that firestorm?" Jake smiled, even though he was exhausted and burned from the intense heat. "No problem, Captain. Now, let's get you out of here." The alien crew watched in shock as Jake worked alongside them, helping repair their damaged systems. He wasn't just a pilot or a soldier, he was a hero. He didn't need advanced alien tech to survive. He used his determination, his knowledge of basic survival skills, and the strength of the human spirit to do what others thought was impossible. After hours of work, the ship was finally ready to leave the planet. The alien crew, once skeptical of humans, now regarded Jake with a newfound respect. They couldn't believe what they had witnessed. Jake had walked through fire to save them, and in doing so, he had proven that humanity was far more resilient than anyone had given them credit for. As they left the fiery planet behind, Captain Xaler turned to Jake. "I've never seen anything like it," he said. "You're not fragile, Jake. You're something else entirely." Jake chuckled, looking out at the stars. "Maybe we humans aren't as fragile as everyone thinks." And as the Ithrian sped away from the burning planet, Jake knew that this mission would change everything. Humanity's reputation would never be the same. The universe had just learned that humans were capable of surviving and thriving when the odds were stacked against them. In the vast galaxy, humans were often seen as weak, fragile creatures. The alien species who ruled the stars thought of themselves as powerful and untouchable. They had advanced technology, superhuman strength, and knowledge that far exceeded anything humanity could even dream of. To them, humans were nothing more than small, fragile beings with no real place in the grand design of the universe. Sophie Miller, a young human soldier, had long heard the whispers of alien superiority. She had trained for years in the United Earth Forces, but she was always seen as a lesser being by her alien comrades. They would often mock her, saying that humans couldn't handle the intense situations that they, with their superior abilities, could manage easily. Sophie had learned to ignore it, but deep down, the words hurt. She knew she was strong in her own way, but no one else seemed to understand that. One day, Sophie and her team were assigned to a mission aboard the intergalactic ship Cassandra, a warship owned by the highly advanced Xarnar Empire. The Xarnar were fierce and proud, with unmatched technology and strength. Sophie's job was to assist them during a dangerous mission in a remote part of the galaxy. The mission went wrong almost from the start. As soon as they entered a dense asteroid field, they were ambushed by a pirate fleet. The pirates were ruthless, attacking with weapons that the Xarnar had never seen before. Within minutes, the Cassandra was severely damaged, and the alien crew was knocked unconscious by the blast. The ship's engines failed, and they drifted helplessly through the asteroid field, with no way to escape. Sophie, who had been knocked out by the blast as well, regained consciousness a few moments later. She was dazed, but she quickly understood the situation. The Xarnar crew was down, and the ship was falling apart. The pirate fleet had disabled their weapons, and there was no way to defend themselves. The worst part was that the ship's damaged control systems were failing fast, and a catastrophic system overload would soon cause an explosion if nothing was done. Sophie knew that the Xarnar weren't going to make it out on their own. The pirates were closing in, and they would finish what they started. The Xarnar were strong, but without their technology working, they were helpless. Sophie, on the other hand, was human. She wasn't physically strong like the Xarnar, and she didn't have advanced tech, but she had something they didn't: determination. With the crew unconscious or incapacitated, Sophie was the only one left who could do something. She grabbed her emergency gear and made her way to the ship's engineering bay, where the power core was located. The ship's systems were dangerously close to overheating. Sophie had only one option: she would have to manually cool the core before it exploded. It wasn't going to be easy. The engineering bay was full of smoke and debris. Sparks flew from broken wires, and the heat was unbearable. Sophie's heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't hesitate. She put on her visor and pressed forward. The emergency cooling systems had failed, and there was no way to fix them from inside the core room. The only solution was to manually adjust the power levels, something that required precise control. Sophie's hands trembled, but she pushed the fear aside. She had to act fast. She crawled into the control room, and with shaking hands, she started working on the power levels. The systems were on the brink of failure, and every moment counted. Sweat dripped down her face, but she didn't stop. With each adjustment, the ship's systems came closer to stability. Suddenly, the door to the control room blew open. A group of pirates had boarded the Cassandra and were heading toward the core room. Sophie's heart raced, but she knew she couldn't afford to stop. If she did, the whole ship would explode. She had to finish what she started. Sophie grabbed a weapon from the wall and took a deep breath. She wasn't as skilled in combat as the Xarnar, but she had the element of surprise on her side. As the pirates stormed in, Sophie fired, taking out 2 of them before they could react. The rest of them scattered, but Sophie didn't chase after them. She turned her attention back to the core. With the pirates distracted and the power core finally cooling down, Sophie let out a sigh of relief. The ship wasn't out of danger yet, but she had bought enough time for the backup systems to kick in. The fire in the core room slowly began to subside, and the ship's lights flickered back on. The pirates, realizing that their attack had failed, began to retreat. Sophie stood by the core, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. She had done it. She had saved the ship and the crew, even though she was only human. The Exarnor, who had regained consciousness by this point, emerged from the lower decks, stunned by the sight of Sophie standing alone, victorious. Captain Tormac, the leader of the Exarnor, approached her. He had always looked down on humans, thinking them weak and insignificant. You saved us," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. "But how?" Sophie stood tall, her face smeared with dirt and sweat, but her eyes were steady. "Sometimes, strength isn't about size or power. It's about will, and I'm not giving up on anyone." The Exarner captain stared at her for a moment, then slowly nodded. "We underestimated you, human. It seems we were wrong." From that day on, the Exarner would never look at humans the same way again. Sophie had proven that, no matter how small or fragile humanity seemed, they were capable of great things when pushed to the edge. And in that moment, humanity's last stand had become its greatest victory. The universe was vast and filled with countless alien species, each more powerful than the next. But when it came to humanity, most believed that humans were fragile and weak. They were small, lacking in strength compared to the aliens, and their technology was far behind. The aliens believed they had nothing to fear from humans. But Ethan Ford, a human engineer, knew better. He had always worked hard to prove that humans had something others didn't, a spirit that refused to be broken, no matter the odds. He wasn't the strongest, nor was he the most skilled fighter, but Ethan had a mind capable of solving problems when everyone else was lost. Ethan had served aboard the massive starship Stellar Horizon, an exploration vessel that ventured into the deepest corners of the galaxy. The ship was filled with advanced alien technology, and the crew was made up of various species, each one more powerful than the last. Humans were often seen as merely technicians, maintaining the ship's systems, while the aliens held the real power. But Ethan didn't mind. He was good at what he did, and that was enough for him. One day, while the Stellar Horizon was traveling through a dangerous part of the galaxy, disaster struck. The ship's sensors detected a massive, unstable star ahead, one that was about to go supernova. There was no time to escape. The Stellar Horizon had to move fast, but the star's gravity well was pulling the ship in too quickly. As the crew scrambled to initiate emergency maneuvers, the star's radiation began to interfere with the ship's systems. The Stellar Horizon was crippled. The worst part was that the ship's primary power core, located in the heart of the vessel, had sustained critical damage. Without power, the ship would be caught in the supernova's blast radius, and everyone aboard would perish. Ethan's team was the only one left who could save the ship, and they were out of time. The crew of the Stellar Horizon was made up of powerful beings, but even their advanced technology couldn't fix the core's failure. The only solution was to replace the damaged core, but the new one was located in the ship's engine room, a place that was now dangerously close to the unstable star. The ship's alien captain, Jarnek, a large and intimidating creature from the Vorkian species, turned to Ethan. "You're the only one who knows how to work in the engine room. It's too dangerous for the others. You have to fix it." Ethan looked out into the dark expanse of space. The stars were disappearing as the supernova's pull grew stronger. He knew that if they didn't act fast, it was over. "I'll do it," he said. "But I'm going in alone. No one else can survive the heat." The crew protested, but Ethan had made up his mind. He suited up in the emergency gear and entered the ship's core. He had only one chance to fix it before the star's radiation destroyed the ship. As he descended deeper into the ship's lower levels, the heat began to rise. The closer he got to the engine room, the more intense it became. Sweat poured down his face as the temperature climbed and the air became thick with smoke. Ethan knew that this would be the most dangerous thing he'd ever done. But it wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. If he didn't fix the core, the ship and everyone aboard would be destroyed. When Ethan reached the engine room, he found it a mess of sparks and flames. The power core was cracked, and radiation leaks were everywhere. The room was almost unbearably hot, but Ethan pressed on. He knew he couldn't afford to waste time. With careful hands, he started to assess the damage. The new core was almost in place, but the connection points had been fried by the radiation. Without proper insulation, the new core wouldn't hold, and the ship would be lost. Ethan had to act fast. Using his knowledge of human engineering and the spare parts he had on hand, Ethan quickly worked to rewire the power core's connections. Every moment counted. The temperature was now reaching dangerous levels, and the flames around him were growing higher. Sweat dripped into his eyes, but he didn't stop. As he worked, he heard the distant rumble of the supernova's growing power. The ship was about to be torn apart if he didn't finish in time. Ethan's heart raced, but his mind remained focused. He couldn't give up. He couldn't let the crew die. After what felt like an eternity, Ethan finally connected the last wire. He activated the power core. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was silent except for the crackling of the flames. Ethan held his breath, praying that his efforts had worked. Then, the core hummed to life. The power surged through the ship's systems, stabilizing the entire vessel. The emergency lights blinked back on, and the ship's engines began to hum. Ethan let out a sigh of relief. He had done it. He had saved the stellar horizon, but the job wasn't over. Ethan had to escape before the star's radiation engulfed the ship. He quickly turned and sprinted toward the exit. The heat was unbearable, but he pushed through, knowing that if he didn't move fast, he wouldn't make it. When Ethan emerged from the engine room, the rest of the crew was waiting for him. Captain Jarnock approached him, eyes wide with awe. You did it. You saved us." Ethan, exhausted and burned from the intense heat, gave a small smile. It wasn't just me. It was everyone. But deep down, he knew that his work had made all the difference. The crew of the Stellar Horizon, once skeptical of humanity's abilities, now understood what humans were truly capable of. Ethan had walked into the Inferno and come back alive against all odds. And for the first time, the aliens looked at him not as a fragile human, but as a hero. In the depths of space, the mighty alien fleets ruled the stars, their technology advanced and their power unmatched. Humans, however, were still considered a young and fragile species, unworthy of any real recognition. Despite their ingenuity, humans were always seen as the underdogs, able to achieve great things only by accident. No one ever thought they could stand against the alien powers who held the galaxy in their grasp. Max Walker had always known this, but he didn't care. As a member of the United Earth Forces, he had trained his whole life to protect humanity, no matter how others viewed them. He had always believed that humanity's greatest strength lay not in their weapons or technology, but in their determination and ability to adapt under pressure. It was this belief that kept Max going even when the odds seemed impossible. It was the final mission that would change everything. The Orcs Empire, a brutal alien race known for their overwhelming firepower, had invaded a distant colony. The situation was dire. The Earth fleet was spread thin, and they had no choice but to send Max's team, a small unit of elite human soldiers, to infiltrate the Orcs mothership and destroy their central power core. If they succeeded, they could stop the invasion. If they failed, humanity would lose everything. Max and his team of 4 soldiers, each highly trained and skilled, boarded their stealth ship. The mission was dangerous, but it was their only chance. The Orcs mothership was heavily guarded, surrounded by countless enemy ships and security systems. But Max knew they had one thing going for them: their human ingenuity and ability to think on their feet. As their stealth ship approached the massive mothership, they could see the size and scale of the Orcs ship. It was a colossal fortress, with glowing engines and towering weapons platforms. The crew, mostly aliens, went about their business, unaware that a small human team had just boarded their vessel. Max's team quietly infiltrated the mothership, moving quickly and stealthily. They encountered several guards, but the humans were faster and more agile. They took out the Orcs soldiers with expert precision, using nothing but their wits and hand-to-hand combat. Every step brought them closer to the heart of the mothership, the power core that needed to be destroyed. But as they advanced deeper into the ship, they encountered something they hadn't expected. The Voreks had activated a series of traps throughout the mothership, designed specifically to stop intruders. Huge barriers of flame and energy fields appeared before them, forcing them to navigate carefully. Max's heart raced as the temperature around him increased. The flames licked at his suit, and the heat became unbearable. But he pressed forward, knowing that failure wasn't an option. The team made their way through the hazardous traps, and they were only one hallway away from the core room when disaster struck. An explosion ripped through the hallway, and Max was knocked unconscious by the blast. When Max woke up, his head throbbed and his vision blurred. He was alone. His team had been separated during the explosion, and the mission was now in jeopardy. The power core was just ahead, but he couldn't complete the mission alone. The enemy was closing in. Max's heart sank. He had no choice. He had to finish the job. Despite the pain, Max pushed himself to his feet. He had always believed that humans were capable of extraordinary things when the heat of the moment arrived, and now was that moment. He couldn't let his team down. They were depending on him. He knew he had to reach the power core and disable it before it was too late. As he limped through the hallways, avoiding Voreks patrols, Max could feel the heat building up again. The temperature was rising, and the air was thick with smoke from the explosion. The fire from the traps had ignited parts of the ship, and now Max had to endure the inferno as he approached the core room. When Max finally reached the power core, he saw that it was surrounded by an energy field, another one of the Voreks traps. He had no choice but to shut down the field manually. With his heart pounding in his chest, he reached for the control panel and began typing in the codes. Sweat streamed down his face as the heat intensified around him. The energy field flickered, and the power core began to lose its energy. But as he worked, a sudden vibration shook the ship. The Voreks mothership had begun its self-destruct sequence. The ship was about to explode, and Max had no time to finish the job. The countdown clock ticked away, seconds slipping by faster than he could move. Max made a split-second decision. He wasn't going to leave without completing the mission. He took out his detonator and activated it, setting the charges around the power core. The energy field surrounding the core flickered for a moment before completely shutting down. Max's heart raced. The core was going to explode, and with it, the Voreks mothership. Just as he was about to leave, a massive explosion rocked the room. The power core had been destroyed. The Voreks ship was going down. Max barely managed to escape the blast zone, running through the corridors, trying to avoid falling debris and flames. The ship shook violently, and he had to keep moving if he wanted to survive. Finally, Max reached the escape pods. He was exhausted, covered in burns and bruises, but he had done it. He had completed the mission, and the Voreks mothership was destroyed. As he sat in the escape pod, waiting for the Earth fleet to pick him up, Max couldn't help but smile. He had done it. In the heat of the moment, with the odds stacked against him, he had proved that humanity was far stronger than anyone had ever given them credit for. The universe would never underestimate humans again.